Bonjour!
Welcome to Pardon Our French with Quincy and Justine. We are so excited to be back. It's episode 6, which is kind of crazy.
Wild.
It's been really fun. If you are enjoying the podcast, please subscribe, like all those things, tell your friends. We did post a poll on our Instagram a little while ago about which pastry people prefer, the croissant or the pain au chocolat.
And of course, pain au chocolat won. Although I think we can both agree that they're equally amazing.
Yes.
And for those who do not like chocolat, I guess the croissant is the best option. But with that being said, we thought it'd be really interesting to do an episode about health and nutrition in France compared to the US.
I feel like everyone wonders about the French and how they're so thin, or at least, that's the stereotype. And whether it's true, is it all cigarettes and walking,
I think we can all agree that French people hold the stereotype of being very small and thin and very healthy or health conscious or just smoking cigarettes as suppressants. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about growing up with French parents, but in the US.
Yeah.
And the kinds of meals and like the eating culture and how that was for me. The only catch, I think, is that my parents are biologists, so I kind of grew up with that almond culture vibe.
The almond mom culture.
Almond parents.
Almond parents. I haven't heard almond dad. That's true.
Oh,
but
gosh.
Do you have an
I think
almond
my dad is more almond than my mother. I guess typically what I can say, because we did still eat very French, if you will. We had bread at the table with every meal. My parents drank wine every night. They still drink wine every night. We have cheese after our meals. And, there's always a green on the table, protein, whatever. That's pretty much the principle of the French culture. And, I think a big thing also is tarts. I think tarts in France are, the equivalent to casseroles. And I feel like you don't always eat tarts, but I think savory tarts are a thing, like quiches and,
That's
making,
very French, for sure.
tarts with, zucchini and ricotta and goat cheese, whatever. So we did have those from, now and then. But I think the biggest difference was we always shopped locally, and that's a big thing in France as well. I think shopping local and fresh is, super important because I don't know if a lot of people know this, or maybe they do. A lot of food that's imported is picked before they're ripe, and then it ripens on the way there, and it loses a lot of its nutritional value. So I think keeping in mind, nutrition at the core of things. But that being said, my parents also never allowed us to have fast food or junk or candy or chips or just little snacks. And I was surrounded by that at school, people having chips, Cheetos, Doritos, candy, sweets. And that was just not allowed. And for me, that was damaging in the sense that I started binge eating those things when I had access to it. And then I had later on had a really obsessive control over what I put in my body, and everything was very pre-planned. So, that's also my personal journey, and I don't think I hope that's not common because that would suck.
Yeah.
But, in general, that's kind of how it was in my house.
That makes sense. And it's clear that, each family is different, and each family in the U.S. and each family in France is going to be different.
Absolutely.
I also grew up eating very healthily, and sort of by that, like you said, no junk food, no sodas, no candies, no chips. There was the occasional bag of Tostitos that I would try to throw in the cart that would, half the time make it to the register. But kind of similar, food that you bought at the store and cooked from scratch. It was not frozen casseroles or anything.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep using that example. We did have an occasional taco night where we would use the old El Paso taco mix, which I still try to import into France. Yeah. But in general, it felt very healthy, very balanced meals. But contrary to, I think, your experience, there's not the whole idea of the importance of food in the family dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you didn't have that opposite feeling of wanting to try it all?
Well, the thing is that I also... There's some things that I haven't tried because I know that I think I would really like them, actually. So it's a preventative measure. The only soda that I drink is ginger ale, and only on airplanes.
Yeah, same. That's an airplane
I don't know
thing.
why.
It's ginger ale and Biscoff cookies.
Oh, my God, yes. Except now I eat... so a Biscoff cookie, how do we describe this? I don't think it's as common. Yeah, but even then, I don't think that...
If you know what cookie butter is,
yeah, they have Trader Joe's cookie butter. They have that here in the original version. It is very addictive.
It's so good.
Highly recommend eating with salty pretzels and or a Granny Smith apple.
Yeah.
So I do sometimes eat that, but like
That's
if I
derived
buy
from
that,
the speculoos
yeah,
cookie.
it's another butter that's not, a nut butter. And has like none of the nutritional value of any nut butter.
It's like Nutella, pretty much.
Yeah. So I guess in the US, they snack more than the French snack.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing that I think you can kind of cut out a lot of not as healthy eating by not snacking.
That's true. Although we do have 4 heures or le goûter, so 4 p.m., which is your snack time in France. And speaking of Nutella, French people are the number one consumers of Nutella. And that is mostly eaten at le goûter on a tartine with like bread and Nutella.
Yeah.
So
But I feel like that's more typically for children.
Absolutely for children.
Like you're not like whipping out a Nutella tartine at work,
Maybe some people do for nostalgic reasons, but no, it's definitely like at school or like on the weekends at home.
Yeah. I
remember like my grandma making me like a Nutella like sandwich type thing. Like,
and I think for kids, for kids, I get snacking.
Yeah, because
like,
they do get hungry.
Yeah, you get hungry, you're running around, you're doing kid things. But I think more for adults is what I meant, that there's not really a lot of snacking.
I also have this really specific memory of like watching cartoons at my grandma's house, like eating a Nutella sandwich, and then these commercials coming on saying like, évitez de grignoter entre les repas, which is like, try and avoid eating or snacking between your meals, or like manger 5 fruits et légumes par jour, like eat 5 fruits and vegetables every day.
Wow.
And it's like that's embedded in the culture since you're little. And like I didn't ever realize that before. I was just like, it's informational.
Yeah.
But like they're really telling you like you got to be healthy, you got to try and do this so that like you don't gain weight.
That's interesting.
But in general in France, portion sizes are smaller, like by a landslide.
Yeah.
I think every time I have a friend visit, they're like, I'm still hungry. And and then I'm like, not, because I'm used to it now.
Yeah.
But it is wild. They're really
and people
so
eat
much smaller.
Slower as well. So like I still find this, like I go out to dinner and I have friends visiting. I was just eating with Jaya the other night and she was finished in like a couple minutes. And I was like, it took me another like 20 minutes to eat. And I think that's just like the idea is that you just are taking it slower. You're not like...
You're enjoying your food.
Yeah, you're enjoying your food. You're taking the time to savor it.
And that's the whole thing in France. It's like your community and quality time, it happens around a table. It happens around food. Like preparing and sharing a meal is one of the most like essential pleasures in French culture.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people see like in movies and films and TV shows, or just like they hear about French cooking, and the idea is it's cooked, like we cook with butter, we eat a lot of bread, we eat foie gras, we eat, very fatty things, but it's because we enjoy it and we take pleasure in it, and it's done in moderation and not in excess, and we eat slow, and we make sure that what we're eating is like really bringing us joy.
Yeah.
And we're not doing it just because like, oh, this tastes good, I'm going to like eat as much as I want. I'm not going to goinfre myself. Like goinfre.
And it's less
like
about like utility.
Stuffing. Yeah.
To me, because like in the US, it's so common to do like a to-go lunch or, breakfast at your desk, like things like this. I feel like that rubs a lot of people the wrong way in France, because like food and eating is supposed to be like a time for you to appreciate it and a time for you to...
You'll never see a French person eating at their desk.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Ever. Like no way.
Or like taking a sandwich. You never see someone like taking a bite out of something like walking down the street.
No, that's sacrilege. It's like absolutely
like a
not.
coffee cup to go is even like kind of
pushing it.
Yeah, really pushing it. Yeah.
You see it now, but it's very pushing it, because you want to sit at the cafe, you want to people watch, you want to take your coffee with like your croissant,
Yeah. And then I think in terms of what contributes to this idea of French people being so much thinner and stuff, it's not necessarily, and we'll get into the exercise portion, but it's literally just the food in Europe in terms of like the regulations and the preservatives that are in food in the US versus in Europe. I actually did a little research on this a while ago because I was quite interested. Like, I know people talk about it a lot, but I wanted to actually get down to know what the rules, what it actually is. And essentially in Europe, when there's a new additive that people want to put into food, it's by default not allowed until it has been specifically approved. Whereas in the US, it's basically like innocent until proven guilty. Like you're allowed to put whatever you want into the food until the FDA says that's been proven to be bad for you. And even then, I feel like things are...
Even then, I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a lot that, we eat in the US. And that's why we actually... I have people bring things over to me for the US. Like little like staples, kind of like vestiges of childhood or of like, college, honestly, more so than childhood. But like I have people bring me goldfish and bring me Cheez-Its and things like that because the ingredients in those are banned in Europe. Like you're literally not allowed, like you can go to American stores in Paris and find some things like Jell-O and I don't know, Swiss Miss chocolate mix or hot chocolate mix, things like that. But there are some things that are literally banned from being imported into Europe.
Specifically Skittles, which is the most recent one.
That's
yeah. Skittles are banned.
Oh my God.
Pop-Tarts are banned. Cheez-Its are banned. Red and yellow Gatorade are banned, but because they contain the dyes like yellow 5, yellow 6, red 40, and those are cancerogen. Like they have been proven to cause cancer, and so they're like, we will not sell this in Europe.
Yeah.
In the U.S., you never hear about that. Or if you do, you just kind of like ignore it because you're like, I'm going to die anyway, so.
I know now when my mom brought me some of the Old El Paso taco mixes and they have Old El Paso stuff here, but they don't have that mix because it probably has so many nitrates in it that they're like, this will kill you.
Yeah, there's a limitation on nitrates and meats even.
Yeah. So I still eat that, but not often enough for it to make a difference, I like to think.
Preservatives that are just illegal.
Completely illegal.
Which don't say preservative in French if you come here.
Because that's a classic, what we call a faux ami, something that you think sounds like,
the same word.
The same word. It's not. I said that on a date once.
No, you didn't.
I was having this conversation. I was like, je crois qu'il y a moins de préservatifs dans la nourriture en France. And he just started laughing.
He's
and I was
like, less condoms?
Yeah, that's what that means. Preservatif. I didn't know that yet. Mm-hmm. I was just a sweet young thing.
So it's conservateur, if you would like. But I think all in all, if a French person and an American person ate the same exact meal in their respective countries, it's likely the nutritional value of the two would not be the same.
Yeah.
It's all about the fresh and local from the market versus frozen or canned or prepackaged. Also, like methods of cooking. That's something that in the U.S. people do not talk about. A lot of vegetables are cooked a certain way, and that literally rips away all the nutritional value from a vegetable. Like air fryer keeps all the nutritional value in your foods. And that's becoming more of a thing in the U.S., especially in like the health culture parts of it. But yeah, that's things that like in France we've talked about for a long time.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to go into like a rabbit hole of that later. But moving on from like just food.
Yeah.
I think that's still like, that's a huge part of the stereotype of the French being thin is that sort of, they're not eating a lot and they're smoking and whatever. Or they're eating not a lot, but of a lot of very we would consider fatty foods, but still being so thin. And I think that it's really important to talk about that there's a difference between being thin and being physically fit and healthy.
Yes. I think health in general, and I think this is becoming more of a thing now that people are realizing, health can look different on everyone. Like I'm bigger than the average. I'm plus size, if you will. But I don't have high cholesterol. Everything's healthy when I get my blood results done. I am physically active. I work out. I eat well. I'm a healthy person. But if a French person saw me, they'd be like, you're fat. You're unhealthy. And that's because French people, like they equivalate fat with unhealthy. Yeah. And they're really direct. They won't say it as a mean thing. They're not telling me I'm fat to be an insult. They're literally just factually telling me like, you're fat or like you've gained weight or you've lost weight. And it's just the idea of like that means unhealthy and that means that you need to do something about it. And the fact that
they would say that to you.
They feel okay saying it, let me tell you.
Jesus.
But yeah, I think maybe it has to do with genetics. Some people just have great genetics and they don't gain weight easily. But also just the standards and how fat-phobic French society is. There's this idea of beauty and like beauty is thin. You must be thin. You don't see a lot of models that are curvy, like even thin people with bigger boobs or a big butt. You don't see that. They're all super small.
Yeah, that's true.
Many people smoke cigarettes as hunger suppressants. And I think that's becoming less of a thing because just cigarettes in general are cultural. But that's kind of where that stemmed from. It was a hunger suppressant and like eating super low calorie foods or eating just less in general and keeping those special meals with their friends. But when they're alone, for example, at my internship, my coworker ate a carrot salad and one slice of ham every single day. That's all she ate for lunch.
Jesus.
And every single time we would bring like croissants or like some kind of sweeten and she would eat it, she would just shame herself like out loud, like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is so bad. And I think that's super common with women in particular in France.
That happened to me in my office. I actually brought in these like stroop waffles because we have like a munching cabinet or whatever. And I brought these in and I was having some and I was like, oh, everyone like whatever. And one of my coworkers made a comment about how like the second you take a bite, and then she went like this and like brought her arms out to kind of gesture that you would gain weight.
Yeah, like a moment on the lips, forever on the hips.
And I was like, well, I'm eating it, so.
Yeah. It's literally anything deemed unhealthy in fries, they must make a comment about how this is so bad.
Yeah.
It's just everything's super toxic around appearance to the point where they had to like put in place a law to not allow anorexic models to walk or appear in shows.
Because you don't want to normalize that.
No.
Yeah.
And it came to the point where they had to realize like, oh yeah, this is really bad. Like we probably need to acknowledge that it's bad.
Is that the same law, or it might be a different one, but related? They made a law where if an ad has been retouched or a photo has been retouched, it has to say so on the ad.
Yeah, like any kind of Photoshop or airbrushing.
Yeah. Which I think is cool.
I think it's great.
I think it's great, yeah.
And then again, like for me, shopping is a huge burden because when I go into a store, you can't find anything above a size 12. And even if there's a size 12, it probably won't fit you right because European sizes are smaller.
Yeah.
And if they have a size 12, you're lucky because usually they only have like one model of a 12 in the store.
They are generally just smaller though because like I think in the US, I'm normally like a 2-4. And here, I'm buying like 6.
Yeah, it's just
and so like everything is just the range is just shortened.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of like exercise, if we're going to talk exercise, that's also seen as a burden here.
Yeah. I think a big difference here is that exercise is not really something generally enjoyed, but it felt, as you said, like an obligation, like it's something you have to do. There is an equivalent to SoulCycle here. I used to do SoulCycle a lot in New York. It's pretty much copy paste the same thing, but in the US, like the room there's an energy, people are actually having fun. I'm like one of those really annoying people who's like smiling while I'm at SoulCycle. Like it's just a good time and people are cheering, people are getting like hyped up, and that's where like in the US, I think the exercise in general is approached and also marketed as something that's good for your mind as well, for your mental health, which is a huge reason why I exercise. But here, it's like no one is enjoying themselves while they're working out. If you go to this copy-paste SoulCycle here, the room is just silent. And it still feels so weird to me because I'm like, I try to still have a good attitude when I'm working out because I'm like, yeah, you're going to be miserable if this is just something you feel like you have to do not to lose or not to gain weight, then that's not going to be a fun time for you. But there's so many ways that you could make it fun and have a good time, but they just, that has not caught on here yet.
Are the instructors also quiet? Because I feel like I went to like one SoulCycle class in the U.S. because I was more of like a base camp girl for L.A.
Okay.
But like I remember it being like an inspirational speech of like, think about tomorrow and like, why are you doing this for yourself today? Like, do they do that here?
They don't do that here. They'll hype you up and they'll be like, come on, you got it. Like, keep going. But like, they're not giving you the sermon.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, which is something that I love. And of course, you know, they have the Pilates, they have the yoga, they have the cycling. They even have berries, which is something that we went to the other day together.
But it's a lot of English speakers. It's not a lot of French people.
Yeah, they actually do a lot of the classes in English because it's such an Anglophone group that goes to these that it's like they know who they have to cater to.
Yeah. Even gym culture. Like I mean, in LA, I was like base camp with my thing, which was basically berries, but like on a bike. And then you get off and do your floor exercises.
Okay.
But I was also just like a big gym rat. And I hate calling myself that. But I'd be at the gym every single day. I would be working out a different like area of my body every day. I had my schedule, I had my workouts. And here, that's definitely not a thing. And I think partly it's because in the US, we're driving everywhere, we're not walking. Yeah. So we know, like, we want to make that time where we can be physically active and like move our bodies and like decompress from the day. So I did sign up for a gym here, and the gyms here are just like 10 times more expensive with like half the things, like a lot less to offer. The locker rooms aren't nice. Like they don't have classes. If you want classes, you have to get the more expensive plan. And if you want the cheaper plan, which is like about 20 euros a month, you have these obnoxious rules that go with it where you can only go between like 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., which is like the time you would be working. So
Yeah.
obviously, like, you can't get that plan. And the etiquette in general is super different because it is new here. So gym people who go, like, they sit at machines for a really long time without thinking about people who might want to hop in and use that machine.
Yeah.
They don't share sets. That was a big thing. Like, I would ask people if I could hop in on their set, which is when you go while they're taking a break on that machine, you do your set and then you kind of swap so that you can both be using the machine at the same time. People looked at me like I was crazy when I asked that. And also, when you see people at the gym, most of them already small. Like, people are smaller here. Like, they're thin. Some of them are fitter, but a lot of them are just very, like, thin and fragile looking. They're not like big weightlifters that have a ton of muscle. There are a couple of them. And then you see me coming in and I'm like this curvier woman and you get stared at and commented at. And it's like, what are you doing here? Oh, you don't know how to use a machine. It's like, well, buddy, let me tell you, I've been using
I think I might know better than you.
Yeah, I'm like, I've been going to the gym for 10 years. So it's really different. And I think that was a huge shock for me and also discouraged me from going to, I hate that it discouraged me, but it made me feel discouraged to go because I was like, I know I'm going to be the biggest person there because I'm just a bigger person in France in general. Like, compared to when I go to the US, I see more people who look like me.
But then to have that, like,
Also
to walk
pointed
into
out
a gym and always feel like people are looking at you, like.
Yeah, it's not a great feeling. I was a lot more fit also in the US, and I think part of that is like the food change here, just because I was in the US super like OCD about what I put into my body. I was in LA. LA is a very almost toxic place in terms of like, you know, food. I was just really like, I can't eat carbs. I can't eat, you know, all these things. I would have greens for breakfast, like protein and a green, really little sweets. And here you're like walking by boulangeries on your commute home and you're like, well,
It smells so good.
Pain au chocolat sounds right about good right now. But, you know, so there have been adjustments. I've had to adjust. My body's very, you know, it changes as you grow. I've also always have been chubbier. So it's just been a journey of trying to find out what works for me.
Yeah.
And I've gotten to a point where I accept that this is what I am. And it doesn't mean I'm not unhealthy.
Exactly.
Did you feel any like weird discouragements going into classes or like aside from it not being as like pumped up and like energizing?
Honestly, no.
Even with like the quantity of walking, I guess you weren't really a driver either, but
No, I'm not good on wheels in general. I've been told and through experience. No, but I feel like I did more seamlessly like transition into the class, at least like the class workouts here, because I just basically tried to find things that would replicate what I like to do in the US. But even in the US, like if I think about it, the only thing I did in the US when I was there was SoulCycle.
okay.
And so it was really during COVID when I started to do a lot of online classes that I got into yoga, I got into Pilates, like I got into all these things. And then I would basically try to find studios that have those types of exercise classes in Paris. And I found them. They are very expensive.
They're so expensive.
I use ClassPass, which is an app where you can basically pay a certain amount a month and get credits that can be used at all these different studios across the city. And they also frequently will give you a discounted price. Because, for instance, like the Legree Pilates place that I go, if you were to buy that on their website, it's 47 euros a class, which is just not something that, you know, that's too much.
Yeah, can't afford that.
You know, so that's something that I do struggle with because, like, I do love to work out, and so I often don't have enough money every month to work out through the month.
That's the thing. If you want to work out, if you want to work out in Paris, you have to pay so much for it.
Yeah.
Whereas, like for me in California, things were affordable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's expensive also, but it was affordable for like the salary that I was getting and I prioritized that in my life.
Yeah. No, and I'm at a point where I usually have about 2 weeks worth of credits where I can work out and go to the classes that I want to go to, and then I have about 2 weeks where I have to wait, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, you're like, I guess I have to do a home workout.
Yeah, like it just kind of sucks. So
even home workouts are hard because we have smaller apartments and no yards, and
the floors are so creaky. I feel so bad for whoever lives below me. You know, like I can't justify doing like all those things.
My like jumping jacks.
Yeah, I mean, I did it during COVID. Sorry to whoever was living below me at the time.
Overall, that's like the main differences that we've seen. I think for sure, like different approaches to food and like enjoying food, and also like what food means, what health means, what working out is like. I think for us, working out is really enjoying it and like taking care of, you know, mental, physical, emotional health. Whereas here it's just avoiding getting fat or staying thin. And we touched a little bit on foods that we miss from the U.S. and the classes that we wished were here. And next week, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that, what we really miss from the U.S., what we miss from France when we go back to the U.S., the reverse culture shock, if you will, that we feel.
Oh my God, it's so real.
It's so real.
And it gets worse every time.
It really does. It really does.
Like last time I was home, I was having like a complete mental breakdown and I couldn't like pinpoint why. And my mom was like, I think you might be experiencing culture shock. And I was like, no, couldn't be. And I was like, oh, it totally is.
It totally is.
And it's not just the fact that I had to pay $18 plus tax for a shitty glass of wine at this quote unquote wine bar that I went to in, you know, outside Boston. That was not a wine bar, but we'll talk about this all next week. We don't have time for this today.
So on that note, we'll see you next week.
À bientôt.
Au revoir.